Ladies and gentlemen, lads and lasses, welcome back to the Fellowship of Fandoms podcast, affectionately known as the FoFCast going forward. Today, I have Strider joining me.
Hello there.
Always a pleasure to have you on. Very excited that we just recently recorded our first episode, and now we're already back in the lab recording our second episode here. And this one is to deliver on our promise to get away from Lord of the Rings news completely on this specific channel and focus on the other things in the fandom. And for this episode, we're covering two shows, Season 1 and Season 2. We are not going into Season 3 spoilers yet for The Wheel of Time, and then also the brand new Daredevil Born Again series, in which we are both fully caught up on that. So with that being said, let's just go ahead and get right into our general overall thoughts on how we felt about The Wheel of Time Season 1 and Season 2 combined. Was there something that really stood out to you? Did you love it? Did you think it was sort of middling? And then where do you hope Season 3 kind of kicks off?
Yeah. Very happy to be here and that we are finally stepping away into other fandoms as well. Really excited to talk about all of this stuff. Wheel of Time. I've watched the first season. So I have not read the books, and as far as I know, you have not either.
No, I haven't.
Correct? Okay. So to people listening, we are approaching this as purely show watchers, which I think will be a big factor in our perspectives of the show. Season one, I thought it was okay, kind of pretty middling, but I also did know that it was similar to Rings of Power. It was filmed right during COVID pandemic, so it was heavily impacted by what was happening at the time in the world and in the filmmaking world, which is one of the jobs that are probably the most hit by such events. So I thought it was quite, yeah, not terrible, not bad, but really not anything special to me. I think especially towards the end of the season, it was clear that they were struggling. However, I also know that um, the actor who was playing Matt in season one was for some reason he was not returning, and he didn't even finish filming all of his scenes in season one, which was I guess a pretty big factor at the end of the season one arc. They had to make changes to accommodate that this actor is not there for the scenes that he was supposed to be there. And yeah, so I feel like in retrospect, I'm not judging season one, but I didn't think it was that good. I think it was pretty much like Rings of Power for me. Maybe
I
even
think that's
slightly
fair.
less fun.
I mean that
Um,
that is what we are doing. We
yeah,
we are judging, and to me, like if we were doing just a general, like a top and a bottom, like what was really good and then what was kind of bad. The news with the Matt Cawthon actor, I think his name is Barney Harris, him leaving and not returning. You definitely saw that towards the end of the season. I think the IMDb and the Rotten Tomato ratings for the season sort of reflect that too. That as the season went on, like the finale took a big hit. The show was mostly like in the mid 7 areas, and then when it got to the finale, I think it dipped to like a 6.4. People didn't really seem to love the finale. I really liked the actor who was playing Matt. I thought his portrayal of Matt was actually really solid, and he was one of the few characters that I really liked for that first season. I also really like the actor who was playing Rand. And again, like you said, I have not read the books. I have a general idea of like where the story is headed because I've been on the internet for a long time and I love fantasy work. So it's hard not to know where the story is going overall. But I haven't like read the book, so I don't know all the inner workings and details of all the different plot points and plot lines that are going on at all times. But I was super excited to watch the show because we were getting ready to watch The Rings of Power, and I felt like this was Prime Video's big first, like, grand hurrah into high fantasy television, and I was hoping that this would give me an idea and hype me up even more for The Rings of Power. When it came to some of the high fantasy elements in season 1, like, the Trollocs specifically stood out to me as something that was not good. I just the CGI for them to me just it wasn't there. And maybe that's budget constraints, maybe it's the issues of people working remotely because it was COVID, and that definitely had an impact on season 1 as a whole. But I felt like I was watching season 1 just to watch it and kind of see what the internet conversation around the show was like, and I
Yeah.
wasn't watching it just because I was loving it. I thought that the show, like you said, it was very middling to me, and I thought that it had a long way to go to becoming a great or even a good show to that point. I feel like again the acting, I thought the actors were fine. I thought most of
Yeah.
the CGI and effects, I thought most of them were fine, but like I said, the Trollocs really stood out to me as something that was not great. And then I just felt like the end of the season was rushed, and as you know, we have both mentioned that was likely due to what was going on in the world with COVID having a big impact on that. Like, what were your high points for season 1, and like kind of what were your low points before we go into how we felt about season 2?
Um, as you said, casting, and especially now after having seen season two, actually, I really like pretty much across the board everybody. I think Dale did a really good job. I really liked Matt as well. I think he might be for me also perhaps the character I'm most like invested in, especially with what's happening in season two. But we'll get to that in a minute. I thought it was all very intriguing, but like I was mostly watching it because some of my friends were watching it. I mean, all of us, not all of us, but a lot of us at Fellowship of Fans at the time were watching it. I know Lakita was really big on these books and on the show. She was really excited for it. Um, so I don't think there were any particular highs or lows. I think it all just kind of like felt on like a very similar baseline. CGI was all right. I did like Rosamund Pike. I thought she was really cool. I think she really nailed this character as what I think she should be, like what she's meant to be. I think Rosamund Pike really brought it in a very charismatic way on screen. On the other hand, I thought that the the wardens, and especially Lan, who is the warder of Moraine, I was kind of disappointed with him. I liked the actor. He was believable to me, but I felt like it's just yeah. But I feel like it just kind of is. It's like with this whole season, it just not too many highs, not too many lows. Maybe the last episode is when things kind of fell through. It just really felt rushed, empty, without any particular stakes. But again, we know the reasons for those things, so I guess it makes sense. What did you think of like these main characters? Like for example, Moiraine. Like, do you have any particular comments on her?
I liked Moraine. I didn't really love the relationship between Lan and Moraine. I do think the show did a good job of, I don't want to call it like a slow burn, but I think it did a good job of kind of setting the foundation for where these different areas were, who these different types of characters were, or like what their, I don't know what the proper word for it is, but like their guild or their team. Again, I'm struggling with the
Mm.
word here as I'm thinking
Like
of
their
it, but
place
like
in the world.
yeah, like who the White Cloaks are and what their beliefs are. How far will they go to, enact like their beliefs and their justices for what is right and what is wrong. Um, all the ladies in the White Tower, the Aes Sedai people, like what is it that they operate on? How do they feel about things from like a moral standpoint? The different factions of Aes Sedai. The I thought it was cool that they have like the three oaths, one of which being that an Aes Sedai cannot tell a lie. So you would think a character that can't tell a lie is very one dimensional and it's easy to always know what's on their mind and what they're going through. But as you see throughout season 1 and again into season 2, they have a way of navigating a conversation to not answer something that they can't lie about, but also not give you all the information you're looking for. That way they still have some secrets themselves. And I thought all that was great. I thought the dynamic between all the guys, Matt, Rand, and Perrin, I loved that. I love me a good like bromance buddy cop type
Good
thing. So when you see
romance.
all the guys getting together having a good time, that's cool for me. I really like Perrin as a character, and the actor himself. I tell my
Oh
fiance all
yeah.
the time, like I feel like early on he didn't get enough opportunity to shine, and he's one of my favorite actors in the show. I also like his storyline with um, he ends up coming into power, and his eye color changes, and there's so many different factions. I think that's the word I was looking for earlier. There's so many different factions of people and places in this world that it is a lot to ask just a casual viewer to jump into the world. It's kind of like trying to figure out Lord of the Rings. You know, if you're not somebody who has read the books and watched the movies, when people start getting into those in-depth conversations and talking about the different areas and lands and towns that people have visited, all the different names of the characters, it can get very confusing for a casual. So it's a lot of like lore to take in. And ultimately, the stuff with even like the Forsaken and Ishmael or whatever his name is, there's just so much to learn about all these different things. And then the wheel itself and how history kind of repeats, and there's the Dragon Reborn character, and men aren't meant to be channelers. If they do channel, they end up going mad over time. Like there's so much to take in, and there's so much going on. And I think that they just had so much ground to cover in season one that it probably hurt them more than it helped. And that's why I think,
Mm.
as reviews have sort of gone along with the sentiment, I think the show has gotten better by leaps and bounds over time. The less that they've had to explain things, and the more that they can kind of just show us things.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think especially this world, for example, it was never put on big screen, or at least not as far as I know.
Yeah.
If it was probably in a very minor way. So it's like we don't know anything about it. Like it's really hard to set this all this up. So I feel like season one of shows like this, it just has to suffer very often. Like House of the Dragon had an easier time because actually we already saw this in Game of Thrones TV show. So it was
Yes.
just like, oh, okay, it's the same thing. It has been this global phenomena, you know. And I guess Game of Thrones kind of had the advantage where the world was being built in the first book anyway. So by basically putting the book on the screen with some minor changes, they didn't have to struggle that much. But like if you look at the Rings of Power, which is okay, it's set in Middle Earth, but it's set 3,000 years more or less, depending how you define the timeline, compared to the movies. So season one of Rings of Power as well had to like show and introduce all these completely different locations, all these completely different characters, these completely different plots, things happening in the world. So I feel like it's just what the season one of such shows has to be, and especially if I think if we look back, there aren't really any huge, especially high fantasy shows. I would not describe Game of Thrones as high fantasy. I think it's low
To
fantasy.
me, it
It
is
just
not.
has
It is not
dragons,
high
basic.
fantasy.
It just has, yeah, dragons, and basically it's mostly like a medieval, made up but still medieval world that has its own rules, and it's like fairly easy to get into it. Um, so yeah, I think it's a struggle, but I have to say I did have the luck to have one of my friends from back home. Shout out to Raka and to some of my other friends from our one of our friend groups who were reading the books. And Raka is a guy who loves this world as much as I love Tolkien. So he was my guide, like, oh, who's this? What's this? What's happening here? And he was always very happy to explain. So I had this advantage of it. But I think that's such a great point that it's hard to get into it. And it's probably one of the reasons why people struggle because how do you just suddenly put on screen such a huge, deep world? Season one, oh, I think always has to struggle with. I think it's extremely rare for a show such a complexity that can go for like 15 seasons to have like a great first season. It's just really hard. And I think that was a great point that you said.
Yeah, and there were some again, the relationship between Lan and Moraine getting strained. Moraine, I think it's during season one. Again, we're lumping one and two together, but I think during season one she actually lost her powers or her ability to
Yeah, at the
channel.
very end.
Yeah. So there's a lot that was going on there. And then like a lot of these high fantasy shows, well, there's not a lot of them, but typically it's like the villains seem to have more leeway. They get cooler lines to perform. They get sicker CGI to be able to like showcase their abilities. And you know, it was Ishmael for season 1 and into season 2 as well, who was like the big bad, gonna lead the Dark One and all that. And I thought his actor was like one of the performances that stood out to me in a major way, where
Absolutely.
he was really, really good.
I just want to give also a quick shout out to whatever his name is. I'm not very good with the names of the cast. The guy who plays Logain, the guy that
Yeah,
you know, I
Logain had
think
a
he
cool
just
intro.
yeah, he just looks so cool. Like the actor is just I don't know. For me, for some reason, he doesn't do much at the moment, at least. But for me, I don't know. I see him on screen, and I'm just like, this guy is this guy. Like, this is who Logain is. Like, it's just perfect casting. For some reason, he's just like absolutely nails the vibe of what this character is meant to be. He's just perfect on screen. I just want to give him a quick shout out because obviously the main cast is usually will get more praise, and also for a great reason. I think Rand, who also well, the one thing about Rand, I keep thinking every second he's gonna say, I hate sand, it's coarse and it gets into places." Because he looks so much like Hayden Christensen.
Yeah.
So, but he's great also. Like, and I guess we can move into season two. Do you have any, or maybe we can just
No, I think
retrospect to season one if we.
I think we're on the same page. Season 1 was sort of middling, but we understood that going in, and it was a good intro into the world and getting to learn the lore behind the different factions and characters. And yeah, I think the casting department does need a huge shout out, because not only do they have a significant amount of what you would call like main cast characters that I think were all exceptionally cast, but even like the secondary and tertiary characters that were cast, like you said, Logain, you could just their presence on screen. And also, not for nothing, but I think like for 99.99% of the main character and secondary character cast, they're all pretty attractive people. Like all the, everybody's got the strong jaw, chiseled chins.
Yeah.
All the ladies are pretty, like across the board. It's a great looking, for the most part, younger cast. Like they did a great job finding these actors and actresses who not only look the part, but they could play the part as well. They really did a great, exceptional job there. Going
Yeah.
into season 2 and kind of how things played out over the course of the season, the relationship between Lan and Moraine was very strained. By the end of season 2, they are back being bonded again. That was like one of the big moments. Um, Egwene is a character who sort of like struggles with her powers at times. And she actually, it's her story arc in season 2 that introduces us to the Shan, and these are people who can like collar, which is like a way of like limiting the power of somebody who can channel, so that they can just use it when like the Shan want you to use it. Their storyline was kind of crazy, and they had this like, I can't remember the name of the character who collared her and then was in charge of like caring for her and making sure that she
I
was
think
doing
it
her
was
tasks.
Rena. I think it was Rena, but yeah.
Yeah, that name does sound right. Like the way that she was able to flip the script on her and get the better of her in like the second half of the season after everything that she put her through, that was a highlight for me, because I wasn't really sold on Egwene's character in season 1, but by the end of season 2, you recognize that she is a badass. She can take on a lot. She can go through a lot in terms of like torture, but it's not just that. It's like the mental aspect of, I think it was Leandrin, who was one of the Aes Sedai characters, who is like, I think they call them dark friends in the show. where they're
Marvels, yeah.
working with like Ishmael and that sort of group. And Leandrin is a dark friend, and she's the one who like turns Egwene over to the Shan Chan and gets her set up in that regard. Like she's the one who betrays her. Um, so like if you thought the Aes Sedai were just like these holier than thou, good people can do no wrong, that is completely wiped away. Any traces you had of that, you had to like throw out the window. As her season 2 arc kind of went on as time went on. Nynaeve, who was like, I think that she's the wisdom in season 1. She's kind of like the town healer for the most part. She
Mm.
gets accepted as a full Aes Sedai. She gets to go through, I don't know if they call them the arches or like the doors, but there's like 3 of them that she had to walk through or whatever and go through like a trial. She's able to pass that, and she's like, you find out that she's like one of the strongest channelers in the world. We get introduced to a character named Elaine, and she is going to be like the future queen. She's the heir to the crown for Andor, which is like a big, powerful country in the world. And she has a cool dynamic where she's trying to like get to know the other sisters that she's with there. Not really sure how her story plays out because, again, in my research leading up to the Wheel of Time season 1, I didn't see her name a ton. One of like the big shocker things is that as the season goes on, Ishmael, who's supposed to be like the big bad, who I thought it would be like him versus Rand until the show ran its course, he frees all these other Forsaken characters, one of which is like a big reveal at the end of the second that we'll get into later. Rand finally gets to like showcase some of his power and that he is the Dragon Reborn by the end of the season. Perrin goes with a different group and eventually links up with a bunch of girls, and they are all killers with a bunch of spears and like they're
Oh
total
yeah, the
badasses.
IEL ladies.
Yeah, they are all very, very serious, like strong, powerful. But the character that I liked the most outside of Matt, because I'm a huge Matt fan, even though it was a new actor and he looks nothing like the old actor. So it did stand. It's not like the Rings of Power where they recasted Adar, but it's in prosthetics, so you can like help cover it up a little bit. This dude looked nothing like Barney Harris from season 1. Matt's character to me is awesome. He's easy to identify with. He wants to tell jokes to like cover up when he's scared. He goes through a lot. Um, but again, the character that I was the most taken by in season 2 was Lanfear, who I think when we meet up with her, she's going by like Celine or Serene, and she's like in a bar
Hmm.
chatting it up with Rand, and then her and Rand end up hooking up in the second season before you find out later that she's like this ultra powerful person. For you, like what were the highs and the lows of season 2?
I think the casting again is completely on point. I love Lanfair. I think that's the Forsaken lady's name. I
Yeah,
thought she was really cool. I did not see this twist coming. So again, this is the in this
I think it's
case
a
the good
benefit
uh,
of having not read the books. It's a surprise.
exactly. It's like, oh wow, damn. I okay. I thought okay, there's gonna be something with her, fine. But like to be like the second most powerful person in the show, at least when it comes to the baddies, or like I did not see it coming. So and also like to have this relationship between her and Rand, and it's like this doesn't feel like the one of the tropes I would expect, but that's the beauty of like I know nothing about this plot, and I'm just having so much fun. And I think this is just in this case such a huge relief to have this ability to enjoy the show without stressing about the lore, which is kind of the opposite for us with the Rings of Power, for
Yeah.
example. Um, so I thought this was really cool. I really loved the storyline of Egwene, as you said. I wasn't on. I was kind of on the fence with her and Nynaeve so far. I just didn't
Hmm.
care that much about them, and I feel like this is the advantage of the books because I was watching some breakdowns and so on, and people always emphasize how I mean obviously when you read the book you can see like the thoughts of a character and how they interpret things and so on, and you can miss these things on screen, but when someone points it out it's like oh okay that makes sense, and then it makes sense that Egwene did things in a certain way, and then her story arc was terrible. It was great. It was really well done, but it was really terrible what she went through. It's awful. And there's a scene where that lady that is kind of owning her, I
Yeah.
think I said Rana or whatever. She cuts off Egwene's hair because Egwene has been so persistently defiant. And actually, this is what I knew thanks to my the talks with my friend and to one of these channels I was watching. The hair is extremely important in the culture of the Two Rivers, which is where they come from.
Hmm.
So the fact that this happened to her, it's like, you know, basically her body getting violated. Like it's really terrible that this happened to her, and she manages to push even through that. This doesn't actually break her, and at the end of the season, she manages to get out of that. So I thought that was really cool. But as well for Nynaeve, by the end of the season, even though I wasn't very happy with, I think they made her kind of overpowered, and then they kind of had to like tie her down. So she
Scale her
didn't really
back.
do much. Yeah, she didn't really do much in season finale, but her story throughout this season was also really cool, and I actually kind of like her now. I didn't really enjoy her character that much in season one, so this is all really good, and I just feel like the best part of season two is that it's delivering on the things it was setting up in season one. I think that's like the biggest reward that I got from this season because it's like, okay, it's much more fun, just like on the pure level of entertainment. It was just much more fun, but also I felt like, okay, the fact that I saw season one and now I watch season two, I'm excited for season three because some of the things that they unraveled so far were great payoffs compared to season one. And okay, now I'm actually really excited for whatever's coming next. So yeah, I don't know if I missed anything. I mean, there's so many things to talk about. I
There
guess.
are. I think one of the things that I really appreciate about the Wheel of Time, especially as season 2 went on, and I think it was by the time I don't want to make it sound like I was a downer on the show. I just thought it was like an average show for most of season 1 and into season 2. But by the time we got to the finale, something clicked for me and I was just really really enjoying myself and thought, "Okay, this is the kind of show that I've been wanting to watch. It's high fantasy, it owns the fact that it's high fantasy. Yes, there are some grounded elements, but there's things that happen in season 2 where it's like even a casual fan would have to admit like, okay, this is very much fantasy world. Like when the girls can link up and kind of share power to create like super spells or like overcharge some of their spells to make it do crazy stuff and take out whole waves of enemies that are coming their way. Like that is awesome to see, to be able to go into the finale and you think you're at the point where Rand is about to dominate Ishmael, and then Ishi is he gets the, or actually it's not him who gets the best of. He ends up like splitting like where Rand and Matt are. Matt's trying to help out. He like throws a spear or some weapon, and because Ishmael's not actually there, like it phases through him and hits Rand and pierces him, and it gets him so good that he's going to die. But luckily, Elaine is there, and even though she's like a newer character, and you know she's supposed to be again the future queen, she gets to showcase her power in trying to heal Rand to the best of her ability so that he doesn't die. Uh, Again, I think it's in the finale or it's in the penultimate episode. But Moraine is standing on the beach and she uses her
It's at the
power
same
to
time.
channel. Yeah, so she's using her ability to channel to cast a spell from forever away at these boats to destroy them before they can make land and be able to do even more damage and chaos. I think at one point it even ends with like a flaming dragon kind of like scaling the tower that they're on. Matt gets to have this awesome moment where he blows the horn of Valir, which is like this legendary horn, and it summons all the heroes of the past, and you see all these people show up. That's just those types of very very high fantasy moments that it's like that's the stuff when I read a book, I'm trying to picture how it's going to look like in my head, and it's that like that's what when I read Tolkien, it's hearing what an elf is or what a hobbit is, a dwarf, hearing about these different areas or these spells that can be cast, these different feats that they do that can't be done in real life. Like that's why I love fantasy so much. And Wheel of Time really leaned into that for season 2, and I love that. And as the season played out, Lanfear kind of becomes almost like a scarier character than Ishmael. And despite the fact that they do let you know how scary and how powerful she is, because the show does a good job of setting up how strong the baddies are, at the very end of the second season, she gets caught off guard by another Forsaken, Mogideon, who catches her in like a web. And like with that being sort of how season 2 ends, you think Ishmael and Lanfear are these uber powerful characters that everybody needs to freak out about, and like this needs to be the concern and the worry. And then boom, they pull another character out of nowhere to end the season, and they're a threat immediately. And I just thought they did such a great job of ending season 2 and having me on like the edge of my seat, actually excited for season 3.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty strong finish to season two. I agree with that. I thought the final battle, I enjoyed it. I just saw it like 2 3 days ago, and I think it was really well. But I also felt like it was in some way, I cannot put my finger on it, but some bits of it, it felt a tiny little bit rushed or unclear, maybe. And I was watching some of the reviews and the people who read the books, and I guess they were all on a similar, they had a similar impression, but still overall, it was really a great ending to the season. And the dragon that shows up, so there was like this whole prophecy about the dragon reborn showing himself in Falm in this city where the whole thing at the end is, and showing himself on like fiery skies or whatever. And there was a I didn't expect this. I was curious how they were gonna pay this off. Like, is Rand gonna, I don't know, shoot fire in the skies, or it's just gonna be like the consequence of a huge battle where there's just a lot of fire flashing from this tower. And actually, there turned out to be that Moiraine was, she realized what was happening, and she summoned the huge dragon,
Yeah,
which wasn't in
she's
the
helping
books.
fulfill the
But
prophecy.
yeah, she was like, "Yeah, my mission is I will fulfill the prophecy. I will help the dragon." And there was this whole arc with her and her partner, or like paramour, the lady who is the Amyrlin seat. She's like
Oh,
the
Sawan.
chief of the, yes, one. We had a flashback scene in season two where it shows the two of them being carefree, having a nice time, being together, loving each other, and then they witness that only the two of them witness this prophecy about the dragon being born at this very moment, and they decide, okay, well, everything changed now. Like, we were thinking about, eloping, going to live somewhere on our own, loving each other and all that, and then now it's up to two of us to make sure the world doesn't end. And then there's this 20-year long story and mission of theirs where they need to keep the dragon. And then this culminates in this moment where Siuan, I'm not
Yeah,
sure what's
Sawan.
her,
Yep.
Siuan, she wanted to cage the Rand, but then Moiraine and Lanfear, and Lan and their whole gang, they help him escape, and then the two of them, Moiraine and Suan, they have uh, a conflict. They come into conflict themselves, and it's like, where does this leave the two of them? But then fast forward to season two, to the finale, and you see Moraine being like, okay, this is it. This is the moment where Dragon announces himself. I need to make sure that everybody knows. She summons the dragon, and it's like this huge tower. Like, the dragon is as tall as the tower, and he's just like swirling around the tower. It was a great scene, and I thought that was a pretty strong finish to a already really strong season. I just had a lot of fun, and I have these friends who are reading the books. They're not very happy with some of the changes. I'm not sure what their opinions are on season two, but I know they were like iffy on some of the lore changes. But I'm looking forward to discussing this further with them and maybe reading the books. But overall, I thought it was a really good season. So how would you compare like season one and season two? If season one was middling, where did this leave you?
To me, it went from season one, good intro, but as just a full season of television being more like a middling season. I thought season two was back in the higher end of the middle or the lower end of being good, but it also had like a really strong finale. That's kind of like where I rated that out. What about you?
I mean, I kind of similar. I thought season one was a five or a six, basically. If like 10 is the most fun I can have with a fantasy IP, like whether it's a movie or a cartoon or something. I thought it was like five or six, but I think season two is at least a seven. I just had a lot of fun. Like it was just one of the like I was just conscious of how happy I was the whole time I was watching season two because it was just this. I think you said it earlier. Like this is what I want. I want a fantasy show that's just fun, engaging, and the world is interesting. It doesn't have to be the most epic thing ever. It just has to be interesting and fun. Like interesting in terms of like the world
Yeah,
building and so on. And I just want actors to do at least just a good enough job. They don't have to be spectacular. They just have to like just believable enough that I can watch this and pretend that they're who they are on screen. And I just had fun, and it was so good. I feel like I just needed some nice fantasy that I don't even know anything about to just relax and like discover whatever's going to happen because I know nothing about what's coming. And every second it's like, oh, this is a cool news discovery. I did not see this. I did not see that. I just loved it. So I think it's at least a seven, probably an eight. Maybe I'm
yeah,
being even too strict. I don't know. I just had a lot of fun. I'm
yeah. No,
excited
I,
for
I
season
definitely
three
feel
even
like
more.
7.75 to 8.5. Like if anybody who rated it in there, like I wouldn't have any argument against that rating at all. And like you said, it's very high fantasy. It's what I want. I know it's not like the thing that's most popular in the world right now. People love in mass. There are shows that are more grounded in reality. Game of Thrones was massive because it did a good job of like towing the line where it had moments of high fantasy. Like White Walkers is
Mhm.
high fantasy, the dragons are high fantasy, but like 90% of that show is kind of like, well, what if Lord of the Rings was like an Arthurian time tale, um, where it's like the Middle Ages? It's much more based in what's real, and then the actual like drama around everything. You can find that kind of stuff in real life. So yeah, there was high fantasy elements to it, but I don't think it's a high fantasy show. Where I think Wheel of Time leans much more into it. You were talking about you wondered how some of like the book readers interpreted the second season compared to the first. I'm big on Reddit. I'm on it all day, and I feel
Yeah.
like from reading the three different Wheel of Time subreddits that there was still a lot of that like that worry from the book readers that the show was starting to get better as a show, but it's not exactly linking up with what was written in the books, and that there's been some big changes, and then there's some changes that are easier to swallow. Like you said, even with the dragon at the tower, because that was part of the prophecy, Moraine felt like she did what she needed to do so that people would understand what was going on here, but that's not how it plays
Mhm.
out in the books, I guess, because I'm not a book reader. But I think as a
Yeah.
casual watcher, which is probably who most of the audience for this actually is, I think it's okay to deviate there. Like if a random dragon shows up for no rhyme or reason, you probably have a crap ton of questions as a viewer. Like, okay, so Rand caused this dragon to show up. Can he do this all the time? Can he just do this whenever he wants? Like he could probably solve all of his problems by summoning a dragon repeatedly as time goes on. But as a viewer, if you haven't read the books, you know that there's supposed to be this thing in the prophecy about the dragon showing up. And then when you see that Moraine is the one who's behind it appearing, you're like, oh, okay. So she was worried that it has to be a certain way due to, all the tales that they've been told in the past. And she is the person who does it here. so you don't expect the dragon to show up like that again in the future because you know, like, she was the one who brought it. It wasn't just like this thing that Rand did. So then I don't think there's like this expectation going forward from a casual member of the crowd that is like, well, how many more times is this dragon going to show up for me? Like, you understand she did it because she felt like from like the I don't know, like the aesthetics of it, like having the dragon there like kind of solidifies him and helps like put some people at ease and obviously other people worry because that means, we're getting to the final battle. At least that's, how the story is supposed to advance. So again, I
Yeah,
get
but the what?
people who
Yeah,
don't like that because it's not what was in the books, and I'm sure that's a massive moment in the books. But I also get like from the directors and producers like trying to do this thing that makes sense for even people who haven't read the books to be able to like grasp what's going on.
yeah. And you know what's the wild thing? Like, there's like I always forget the number 14, 15, or 16 of these books. And season three is covering book four, or will mostly cover book four. So it's like there's like 10 more seasons of this. And
Yeah.
things are probably like where does this go? Like what's in store for us? Because I have no idea. And it's like if there's so many books, there's who knows how many other countries, how many other characters, how many, like all these Forsaken that we are yet
Hmm.
to meet. We only met this third one at the very end of the second season. And there's so much to explore. It's honestly really, really exciting. Like, actually, one of the characters we didn't talk about that much, you said he's also one of your favorites, Perrin, who is also one of my favorites. I
Yes.
think him and Matt, I like, are probably my top three, four for sure. I love them both. And Perrin is, I just want to hang out with that guy and then like hug him and like saying, "Hey, dude, you're doing so good. I'm so proud
Yeah.
of you. Like you're the
So
best.
sorry
Please
for
just
everything you've
keep."
been like
I'm.
through.
It's terrible. Yeah, like he's
Dude
been through
killed his
so
wife
much.
in
Like
episode 1.
yeah, like what the hell? And then he loses his wolf Hopper, and I was like, "Come
That
on,
killed me.
you did not just kill the wolf. God damn you all!" And I I just love him so much, and he does such a great job, and he's just trying, to be a good person in a world that's gone to crap. And I think also what's really interesting is this whole thing that he's becoming. I don't know if they mention it in the show. I think they do. He's supposed to become a wolf brother,
Yeah.
and I'm just very curious about this thing. Like, what's this thing gonna turn into? And also, like, these five friends who happen to be chosen by the wheel to fix it, to make it, to put it back in balance or whatever. Like the five of them, and they reunite basically at the very end of the season. Like where all five of them are gonna go? It's just a lot of really cool questions that are open there, I think.
Yeah. And you have like Matt has a cursed weapon that could make him do terrible things. Rand is a male channeler, so at some point he is gonna go mad. And it's like kind of seeing the journey of that friendship where everybody's getting along, people split up, people come back together. But ultimately, like if you guys determine that this prophecy has to be true and that Rand is the dragon reborn, there are potentially some pretty big roadblocks in the friendship that could be coming up, and kind of seeing how those characters navigate that. It's just like that extra dimension of drama that I do like layered into my shows. Also, because we have talked about the
Yeah.
casting, I don't know who gets with who in the Wheel of Time, but what I do know is that I'm not big into shipping, but when you cast a bunch of young, very attractive people, almost every time anybody talks to anybody on the show, in my head, I think that, oh, like those two are definitely getting together at some point. And then it'll be that one of those characters talking to somebody else 3 scenes later, and I'm like, oh, well, never mind. He's going to get with that character instead. Or, oh, no, she's going to get with this one because they all have like this chemistry
Yeah.
with each other that you can kind of feel it through this screen. And I think again, shout out to the casting department and the writers.
And the actors.
Yeah, like I think
Actually,
they're doing a good job.
there was a moment where that made me think of actually exactly this. when so Rand was wounded by Matt
Yeah.
in because there was that illusion, and he throws the spear that he made from that evil dagger,
Yep.
and he he wounds Matt, and Matt is, and then what's happening? We have all those Ishabala's servants on the ships who are shielding. All of them from the ships are shielding. I think that's the term. Rand, so he cannot channel, and he cannot heal himself either. Or I don't know if that's a thing he can do, if he can heal himself. But anyway, he is not. He's cut off from the power, and he's dying. And I thought Matt, it was just a really cool moment where, and it made me think of what you said. Like, are they hinting at something? Because when Elaine and Nynaeve come upstairs, and Elaine is the one healing him, there's a
Yes.
brief scene where Rand sees Elaine as because he's laying on the ground on the top of a tower. She's leaning over him, and he sees her with the sun basically behind her head, and he's like, "Who are you?" with his voice. And it's just
Yeah.
like there's a brief moment where it's like, oh my gosh, she's the prettiest woman ever. Like it's
Yep.
just in front of his face, like because they don't show her completely, but like you can see that he's kind of imagining and like being awestruck. And it's like, I thought he was supposed to be with Egwene. What the hell? Like,
Yep.
where's this going? What's gonna
And
happen?
Lanfear. Yeah.
And Lanfear, yeah, like Rand is a dog. Like, look at this
Oh,
guy.
you
Like
had
he's just pulling all over.
I thought the warders were only supposed to be attracted to and have feelings for the Aes Sedai that they are warding, which would mean that Lan has feelings for Moraine, which I think he has some. But during season 2, he gets with one of the other Aes Sedai girls that we're following.
I don't remember that.
Well, was I think it was Nynaeve.
Ah, no, yeah, you're right. I was like confused. Yeah, yeah. That was in season one. Yeah, I was like, no one. Lan was with no one in season two. Yeah, yeah, right. In season one, he had a thing with Nynaeve. That's true.
Yeah. So it's like
Yeah,
the whole
actually, I
show,
know, I
every
know what you
character that's
mean.
around each other, they're like, there's something there.
Yeah, yeah. You threw me off for a second. But you were absolutely correct. Actually, the thing when Nynaeve went to the Arches, her last test was having a happy life with Lan. That
Yeah,
was
and they had a
like
baby
the
and everything.
vision. That's what I was like for a second. I forgot about that. Yeah, yeah. So that's also like you would expect. Okay, it's Moraine and Lan, and then it's like, is it? What is happening here? Like you're absolutely correct. Like who's gonna end up with who? Like I think we're gonna turn into shippers because of this show. Because it's like, what, what do we do? What's gonna happen here? What do we expect?
Well, I think
That's
that
a
that
great
is
point.
a good place to stop for the Wheel of Time season 1 and 2 catch up. And then going forward, we can start dropping these weekly episodes covering the full season up to that point, which I guess for next week should be episode 4. And then we'll be on an even basis with the show. And let's go ahead and break off into Daredevil and just start here
Let's
with,
go.
again, similar format for this. That way we're kind of caught up, and then we can kind of go more in depth into the episodes going forward, as we'll have more time. But did you watch the original Daredevil show?
I have, and I think I did like at least two times. I only saw season three once, but season one and two I watched several times, and I loved every second of it. It's easily one of the best superhero TV show, cartoon, movie, whatever. This is one of the best ones of all time.
That was
And
when
what
Netflix was having their Disney glow up with some of these characters, right? Like it was
right?
Daredevil had a
It had
show, Punisher had a
mm,
show. Like there was a handful of them. Luke
yeah, we
Cage.
had Jessica Jones, yeah, Luke Cage,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
Iron Fist, and then they merged, like assembled into the Defenders.
Yeah. Like they're Avengers, Defenders. And I really, really love the Punisher one, but like what I thought was the
Oh,
second best overall
yeah.
to me was Daredevil, and I was very sad to see, more or less like Disney gain those characters back because typically when shows or IPs like change networks like that, it almost for TV at least, it almost always like spells the end of it. Like you're not going to get more um Punisher with the same cast and crew that we already had. You're not going to
Mm.
get more Daredevil with the same
Rebooting
casting.
coming.
Yeah. So when Disney announced that they were doing this, I was like super stoked, and it made me want to go back and rewatch the originals before coming into this. And unlike Wheel of Time, I am a little bit more of a comic book nerd, so I was kind of caught up on like things that are going on. And for this show specifically, I did get caught up in like listening to interviews from the actors and people who I knew were going to be taking place or taking spots on this first season of the Daredevil show, and it had only gotten me more amped up to know that we were going to be like revisiting some of the characters that we had already gotten attached to previously. So you're fully
Yeah.
caught up on
Yeah.
this season, right?
Yeah. Totally.
Did you
Um.
know or have any idea within the first 10 minutes of episode 1 what we were getting into?
Oh man, no. Internet was kind of hinting at it. I was choosing to ignore. I think it had a similar reaction that I did for Hal. Well, spoilers for Rings of Power, but it's your fault because it's been 3 years since season one. Halbrand is Sauron. I was just ignoring this until I saw it on screen, and people were like, "Oh no, are they gonna kill someone? Oh, are they gonna kill off Foggy?" And I was just like, "Come on,
My
please no!
poor
I love
guy.
this guy. Like, he's the best. Please don't hurt Foggy. He deserves the best. He's like Perrin. Like, just leave him be. He's the best.
He's been
He
through
deserves
enough.
peace. He's been through enough. Like, he's just don't." And they did. Like within like 10, 15 minutes. Like, come on. But honestly, that opening was wild. I thought that was just like the first 15, 20 minutes of first episode. It just screamed, "Yeah, Daredevil is back." Did you think that like that as well, or did you? How did it feel? Because there was also like a bit of a different stylistic approach to it. Like it looked a bit more cartoony, not in a bad way, but like it felt like they went for more of a, I don't know, more
As a
noir
comic book
comic book
show,
vibe.
yeah. No, I feel like right now, early on in it's only been 3 episodes, but I feel like they have just struck this perfect chord of kind of like I was saying with Game of Thrones, where it did that great job of, balancing on the line of, is this more fantasy or is this more grounded in realism? I think the Penguin show also did a tremendous job with that, where yes, it's like this
Yeah,
comic booky world, but it's all things that nothing that happens kind of breaks your suspension of disbelief or whatever they call it.
yeah,
Nothing that I watch in this season of Daredevil so far takes me out of it or makes me go, oh God. Other than the oh gods, when you're seeing a character that you love, that you've had multiple seasons with, which in the real world means like a lot of years, enjoying a character like Foggy get killed
like a decade.
in like
It's been.
immediately. Like they don't even like they do a terrible thing, which is like they build you up because you see everybody happy together and people are
Yep,
celebrating, and it's like, oh yeah, let's get those good feelings built up, and then that'll like we'll ride this high into episode 2 when things can start kind of come crashing down. They're like, no, 5 minutes
yep.
in, we're gonna start having the bullseye show up. uh and I don't know if I should share this or not, but I'm gonna. So I want to make something clear. I do not have screeners to the full season. I do not know what is happening past the current episodes that we are currently at. Um, but I am online a lot, and I'm in comic book circles often. And in the show, not just in the show, but in the comic books, Bullseye is a hitman, which he's the character that kills Foggy early on in the first episode of the season. Hitmen don't just kill people to kill people, they kill people because that's what they are
Mm,
hired to do. So Bullseye had to have a specific reason for wanting to kill Foggy. I say that to set this up too. In this first episode, the trio are walking by a building that you don't know like the actual address of what the building is, but you see like the 3 numbered address on it, which is 468. 468 in Daredevil is an actual, like, I shit you not, this is real. Google it when we get off of here. 468 is an issue where Foggy, with the help of others, fakes his own death.
Oh wow.
And here he is in the show now. But in the comics it's a little bit different, because I think that Daredevil can still put his like extra senses to use, and he can hear like a faint heartbeat still, but isn't sure if Foggy's gonna make it or not. Where in the show, at least what he tells us is that he can't hear the heartbeat at all. And then later he's sitting down after like a court case, and he's talking with Karen, and he can tell, like, Daredevil can tell she's lying about something but isn't sure what, so maybe she's in on it and maybe she knows as well. I have so much hope that I didn't get my hopes up that, you know, Foggy, Karen, like the whole, everybody would be back is what I wanted. And I feel like it was ripped away from me in the first episode within 5 minutes. So this is
Yep.
probably not where they're going. He probably is dead, but just due to a handful of Easter eggs that they've thrown me, I refuse to give up the hope that Foggy is alive. And God dang it, Disney, you ripped my heart out. Please let the man be okay. He's been through a lot. He deserves some happiness. Please tell me that this is not the end for Foggy.
Well, I'm not Disney, and also I did not know all of this. This gives me more hope that what I'm about to say is also true. I actually heard in one of the I don't know. I don't know if this is a thing you do. Do you watch like whenever you watch like a show, do you watch like breakdowns and like Easter eggs and stuff and videos like on this topic?
I
Or
do.
like
Shout
whenever
out
you're watching it?
to Heavy Spoilers and New Rock Stars, because they tend to break down all of the shows that but I haven't done that for Daredevil, and I don't do it for the Rings of Power. But everybody else, but I mean, partially that's because that's what we do, is we'll break down the episodes.
Yeah.
But for like when I watch The Boys or if I watch Reacher, yeah, usually within like 2 or 3 days after the episode airs and they drop their recap of everything that you missed. Yeah, I'm a sucker for it. I'll go on and I'll find it and I'll watch that. So
Yeah.
if
So
you've got another little
exactly the same.
a little sandwich of hope that you're about to feed me, please bring it my way.
Yep. Let's share a sandwich of hope. This guy that I've been watching is his channel is called Emergency Awesome. I think he does pretty decent breakdowns of shows, and he said that Disney has already confirmed that the guy playing Foggy Nelson is back for season 2 in some way. So I haven't checked this
Oh,
out, but he is pretty like he's pretty specific. He's pretty precise in his statements. Usually doesn't say something like this if it's not correct. So I'm sure it's somewhere. I just didn't bother to look for it.
yeah.
So if between this what you just said, then I kind of feel slightly less sad for
Yeah.
Foggy.
So like the skeptic in me would go, well, it's probably for some easy
Flashback.
points. Yeah, some sort of flashback just to give me like my nostalgia bait. But
Yeah,
the other side of me goes, man, but if that 468 issue Easter egg, this exact
that's a big
plot
one.
happening, there's, oh man, there might be something there. There might be something there, and I can have my Foggy back.
I want our Foggy back indeed, and honestly, like this is the fact that this is like you don't just choose this number randomly. Like Marvel does this constantly. Like they've been doing this for at this point for 15 years. Like there's always like if there's a number on screen somewhere, 9 out of 10 times it's a reference to something. So the fact that this is like, oh, within the 15 minutes of the episode Fog is in and he dies, within those 15 minutes we will see this number of this specific issue
Mm-hmm.
where this thing exactly happens. Like, come on, this must like if this ends up being a random thing and they just bring it back for like 5 minutes of flashbacks, like honestly, I'm just gonna be very salty about it.
Yeah, like I complain about nostalgia bait for other things, but when the nostalgia bait is happening, I am happy. But if I get
Yeah,
baited, get happy, and then 3 episodes from now I realize I that really was his death, I'm gonna be so hurt. And maybe that's what they need for the story that they're telling for this season. But
could be.
I just want my happy ending with Foggy, man.
Yeah. Yeah, but let's talk about that opening fight scene. Like that was good. That was not, Daredevil was famous for having those one take fight scenes, and some
Hmm.
of them were. I mean, those were the things that really made that show stand out. Like there's a couple of insane fight scenes. Punisher has a crazy one in prison in season two. Um, Daredevil has at least two of them. One is the one that really made the show like huge was the big fight scene in the hallway in season one. He wasn't even wearing his full on Daredevil. He was like still wearing like his black suit
Yeah,
at the time. And this scene, like just watching this, and I really love the colors. That's why I was talking about like the cinematic approach is a little bit different, but I for the most part I really like it. And I felt this fight was just it wasn't in a one shot, but they do it in such a way that it feels like a one shot. And because like someone rolls into the camera and it feels like and they roll out after like half a second, but that's actually where they make the cut. But when you're looking at it, it feels like one whole shot, and honestly I loved it. I thought the CGI in a couple of seconds when Daredevil was swinging over the roofs, that didn't completely land for me, but otherwise I thought that was such a great opening. What did you think of that?
yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I actually think that, and this is just my theory, I don't know this to be true at all, but obviously there was a lot of people who were worried that when you take these shows off of Netflix and you're putting them on Disney, that there may be some scaling back of darker storylines or violence because you are, quote unquote, like trying to turn it down for the children to be able to get as many eyeballs on a comic book show or movie as possible. And I feel like the opening 10 minutes of this was like Disney's way of saying, we
Mm.
heard all your fears. We got you. We weren't trying to diminish or take away any of the character, any of the storylines that you guys know and love, or any of the violence that you would come to expect in a Daredevil or a Punisher type show. We're giving it to you. And I just think that they really knocked it out of the park. And I think that really set the tone for all of the first 3 episodes that we've been able to see so far. It is still a very dark show. It is still a very violent show. And just knowing the characters that are involved, it should be. I think that they've just done such a great job with this so far. And again, we've only had 3 episodes so far, but if things continue at this level or potentially get even better, you're looking at season one being an actual great show right out of the gate.
Yeah, which is crazy. But the interesting story about it is I wasn't following extremely closely like we usually do with like the Lord of the Rings and so on. But as far as I understand, I heard it from on several places, so I'm pretty sure I'm pretty confident this is the case. They actually had to reshoot the show. Did you know that?
Like they had done shooting already and then called everybody back
Yeah.
to do more shots. No, I didn't know that.
No, not even that. They kind of like like the numbers might be off, but the general idea is correct. They were, I don't know, midway through or something, and it wasn't working out. And I think Kevin Feige was the one who was like, or him and whoever else was there, and they were like, "This is not working out. We need to just restart, or like we need to change something." And I think this is the point where they went out and returned, like brought back the writers and like producers or whatever from the original TV show, and then they reshot with the original cast, like the original crew, and then this is what we're getting now. So they didn't like just redo completely, but like they had to like, some scrape some scenes, scrape some little story arcs or whatever, and then reshot and then recontextualized a lot of the time things that were already done, and then filmed a lot of new stuff. So
Wow,
this is
so it was kind
basically
of like a
what we
soft reboot while shooting.
yeah, kind of.
You
So
know what
like they
that is though?
they didn't scrape it, but yeah, yep,
That is a very very mature decision that was made by the higher ups at Disney, cuz other companies or even old Disney would probably look at just pushing through to finish and then you just put out whatever comes out and hope for the best, or
yeah,
scrap it completely. But to more or less like start over and be like, no, we're going to refilm a whole bunch of this. We're going to, even though we hired all these other people, we recognize that there was magic with what the show was on Netflix. Let's go ahead and get some more of these people in, restart over here and see what we can come up with. And
yeah,
again,
exactly.
through 3
To
episodes,
their credit,
they captured that magic and they made a terrific decision doing that.
for sure. To their credit, like that's a big move, and thanks, because so far it has absolutely paid off. I have a really good friend who really loves the show, really is into comics as well. I think maybe probably like on a similar level as you, because you know way more of these worlds than me. Even though in the last 10 years I've been getting into it, but yeah, and he loves the show, and I was the moment I knew the show was good, like it's not good, that it delivered on the hopes, was when he said, "Okay, yeah, this is good," because he didn't enjoy most of the MCU stuff post Endgame. Like we're usually on the same, um,
Yeah, and I agree with that.
how do you say it, on the same in the same place usually. And the fact that he was relieved, I was like, okay, I'm not imagining, I'm not having like nostalgia glasses. Like if you're also liking it, because he's usually also like a bit more strict when it comes to these things. So I was like, okay, this is actually good. I'm not just thirsty for Daredevil. Then I'm like, no, this is proper quality, and I'm just so happy and so relieved. I love this show.
Now we've talked a bit about the heroes and the people that we love and
Mm.
appreciate and are excited to have been back, even if it was just for 5 minutes. But on the flip side of that, you need to have great heroes. You have to have great villains. Kingpin is an all-time great villain, and where he picks off on this season is he's recovering, and then he decides to go into politics and run for like mayor or governor of, New York, which is crazy to think about all the bad guy stuff that he's done. And he's gonna,
It's ridiculous.
yeah, try to like win over not just the regular people, but also cops who would have gone against him for many, many years up to this point. So it's like this whole it's just an extra layer of dynamic storytelling, being able to talk about that. And then even at home for him, while he's trying to do this, his wife has her own bad guy role where she's been in charge of like the empire while he's been MIA, making all her own moves, making big boy decisions and all that. It's like they have a little bit of like they're not seeing eye to eye as well.
Yeah, I thought Vanessa was a very interesting character. I mean, there's just so much praise to be showered at this show, from like the first episode from 10 years ago until right this point.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I'll just start with Wilson Fisk. He is, without a doubt, one of the scariest, most realistic, and also somehow most relatable villains I've ever seen on screen.
Yes.
Vincent D'Onofrio, he's just took this role and just killed it like as if he took its head off with a pair with doors. This is what he did. Which is of course a reference to a terrible thing that Fisk does in season one of Daredevil, when he takes off a Russia's guy's head off with fucking doors. And he's terrifying, but he's so multidimensional. relate. Like, we saw his backstory when he was a kid. His dad was terrible. They grew up in a bad neighborhood and so on and so on. And then he grows up into this big guy who has all these insecurities. And I mean, that guy is so scary. Like, walking dude, like this guy is one of the scariest things I've seen on screen. And yet it's like I love every second of it.
Yeah,
It's
and
just
you
brilliant.
you know, kind of parallels to real life here in the US, not to get into politics too much, but
I was
sometimes
gonna say,
you have a guy running for office and you're like, "How could anybody vote for that person?" But then the show does a good
and then
job of kind of showing you why people would vote for him. They want to change the status quo. They want to put a guy in there potentially who could mix things up because they're not happy with the current state of affairs with the government in the country. Even cops can be torn on, like, I think he's the kind of guy who can get stuff done, but then you'll have others who are like, yeah, but he also put a lot of our people in the ground. So like, and then as he's kind of campaigning going throughout the city, they get to a point where he's promised that he's going to start getting things done, and he's going to rip up all the white tape that constantly have to go through to like approve projects or to get people to start. There's like a hole in the ground um that like is causing traffic to be way backed up, and he steps out of the vehicle and he finds the foreman, and he's like, why aren't we filling this hole? Fill this hole up so like we can all move, fix the traffic here. And people are getting out of their cars because they see this giant man approaching this foreman, and then they realize who he is, so now even more people are coming out,
mm,
and people start recording him, and they see him go to the foreman, and the guy's like, well, we're still waiting on approval from the city to be able to fill this. And he was like, screw that, I am the city, you're approved, let's go fill it. And then from that, obviously, this will blow up in universe. It would blow up online, and people would be like, "Oh, look, yeah, this guy actually does get stuff done. We can rally around him. He can make changes. He is going to change up how we operate." So then people fall for him, and eventually he does win his election, and he wins the job. And then that's a whole nice weird conversation that Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk get to have at a restaurant, talking about like what are they doing, where are they at now, and kind of like come to this agreement to stay out of each other's way for the time being, which
yeah, I
would
thought
be
that
nice. But
uh,
then by the time we get to episode 2, you kind of quickly see that they're not going to be able to stay out of each other's way, because there is a vigilante who ends up murdering a cop in self-defense, to be fair. But he has to
yeah,
go to court so
the
he can
White
do his
Tiger.
hearing. And Daredevil, Matt Murdock, is the person who takes up the case and becomes his lawyer. And Fisk is also trying to win over the cops and also establish that in his reign, he doesn't want vigilantes running around. So then you have Fisk, who wants the cops to win the case, and then you have Matt Murdock slash Daredevil, who wants to win his own case and defend a vigilante slash defending a guy who was only doing this in self-defense. And you can kind of see where the heads were going to be butting against one another. And then as you get through episode 2 and into 3, Hector Ayala, who is the White Tiger, he is exonerated of all charges and he wins the case. And they do this huge speech about why he goes out every night and fights and defends the city and tries to make it a better place, because it's just who he is, and it's just his makeup and what he has in him, and he can't turn that off. But on the flip side, everybody knows who he is now, even if he does put his mask back on. And on his first night back out on the job after he has been found not guilty of all charges, he ends up getting shot and killed immediately. Now, like, that's kind of like what happens in episode 3.
Yeah, and the interesting thing there was we don't see it very clearly, but we saw it also through in the previous episodes for brief moments. The person who shot him had a certain symbol on its shirt, and it was Punisher's skull. And
Yes.
some of the cops that Matt has to deal with, I mean, those cops that were meddling into this case, uh, they also had tattoos of the Punisher skull. So I think everybody saw that John Bernthal, who plays the Punisher, who plays Frank Castle, will be showing up at some point in the season,
Yes.
and I just can't wait to see him come back. But I'm very curious about how this is gonna turn out, and how is this connected, or how it will end up being connected to Wilson Fisk and his wife, and also this all also ties back to the whole what's his name, the guy who kills Foggy, Bullseye.
Yeah.
How this is tied to what you said before, like he's an assassin. He didn't just randomly decide to kill Foggy. Maybe he did, but probably not. He was probably hired. So how does all this tie together? How it will all tie together? Because this is what I like about it. It feels like and I'm pretty sure, and I would prefer it if it doesn't all end up in a perfectly connected, because this feels like really cool world building, because it feels like, okay, there's different factions that are pulling their strings, doing their own
Hmm.
things, and then okay, the main characters get caught up in it. But I wonder how it will all connect in the end, and will it connect in the end? um but yeah, but I was going to say, like, I really like Vanessa's character, and I did
Yeah.
not expect her to be where she's at the moment. I really didn't know what was going to happen with her, and they caught me off guard in a pretty cool way, because I feel like she's hiding something. I feel like there's much more. Like, we are yet to learn a lot about her this season, and I think it's going to be a pretty cool reveal, whatever it ends up being. And I wonder if it's going to end up being connected with either these cops or with Bullseye. But yeah, do you have any theories or thoughts about that?
Yeah. So again, same thing. I think that Vanessa Fisk, she has to play a larger role still. She has this whole criminal empire, so I think that there has to be more there. I'm hoping. Well, before I get to that part, I also think that, and I'm blanking on the character's name, but Daredevil is seeing uh, a woman who was recommended to him through one of the ladies that he works with. And while right now their relationship seems great, just the comic book guy in me says that there's a lot of red flags here, and I feel like she has to be somebody who's not great for him in the grand scheme of things, and maybe like that will kind of come to fruition as the season goes on. Um, my my hope is that for Karen and Foggy, they got wind of something big going down and needed to get away or get out of it, and that they paid Bullseye to hit Foggy with some sort of shot that had something in it that would basically put him out, like even remove the heartbeat for, X amount of seconds, and then cause the scene so that Daredevil can't just stay there and wait for a heartbeat. He would have to go, look for this guy to fight him, to try to kill him, fight him up on the rooftops like he did. And that by the time the heartbeat kicks back in, Karen can get Foggy out of there, and maybe has him out on the West Coast or something in hiding, that he can come back, still on good terms and everything later in the season, and then he can explain why he had to do this and why he couldn't tell Matt slash Daredevil what was going on at the time. That could also just all be completely BS. And again, I haven't seen screeners. I haven't read spoilers for the show at all. As far as the cops who have the Punisher tattoos, or they're wearing the Punisher shirts, including the gentleman who end up shooting the White Tiger and killing him, I think that the story there is probably like the Batman. It is in the Dark Knight. In the Dark Knight, it was the second movie of that series. Batman is introed by having to like greet a whole bunch of these other guys who were kind of like going around the city acting as a Batman. They're not him, but
Mm.
they put the logo on, they put the gear on. They want to fight crime too because they were inspired. For us to see this with the cops, I think that maybe that's, these cops feel like in their job, they can only go so far to put the bad guys away. And through the Punisher, they have seen that sometimes they have to go to a level that they're not allowed to as a regular cop. So maybe some of these guys have the belief that like off the clock they put the Punisher stuff on and they're, they can go to a level they're not supposed to. They can go to an extreme that they're not supposed to. And that maybe that this is what will drive the actual Punisher to come back and try to like fight those guys a little bit, get them in line, and like that's how we're reintroduced to his character. Again, not sure, I don't know, but what I do know is that they have knocked this show out of the park through 3 episodes so far, and I have very, very minimal or minor complaints at all. My biggest complaint with the show is that I don't know how long the episodes have been so far, but I feel like every episode I'm upset that I'm not getting more, and that's such a good problem to have.
That is a great problem to have. I feel you so hard with that. Um yeah, that's what someone said. The I had the same problem. Like the first 2 episodes flew by, and then the third episode was like, come on, this is it. Like I legit thought I was at like midway through the episode, and then 2 3 minutes after that, I was like, oh yeah, okay, cool. I must have like half, like 45% of the episode left. 2 minutes after I had this thought, the episode ended, and I feel like that. Yeah, that's a great problem to have, and I'm very excited to see the next episode. I'm
I'm trying
curious.
to look up the run times, and episode 1, it
Yeah,
looks like it was an hour and 1 minute. Episode 2, it was 49 minutes. And then episode 3, I click on it, at least on IMDb, and I can't see the actual runtime for it. But yeah, I just felt like that, but maybe the episodes have been getting shorter as the season has gone on.
could be. But either way, like it not nonetheless it speeds by because it's just really engaging, and I feel all 3 episodes so far had really cool moments in them. And like in the third episode, we don't even see him, Matt, in the Daredevil costume. Like it's something that he's kind of still processing, and he's
Yep.
still trying to not be the Daredevil. But I did not mind that. Like we still got some action. He met with those 2 cops, or was that this in episode 2? I'm not sure. I know. I think that was in episode 2. But still, like it's been a while since he already had the costume. Like with in universe, it's been like more than a year. However, Matt in like having this whole trial, like him just being a lawyer, I had a great time. Like I didn't like it's we don't need to have him running around in a costume all the time. Like it needs to happen
Exactly.
whenever it happens, and it's great that they did it. It's amazing that they managed to deliver on the show so hard that you don't have to think about, oh, I cannot wait for him to be in the costume because I'm already having enough, or I'm already having the blast with other things. Whenever it comes, I'll be happy. But so far, I'm also having a great time, which is also a really, really huge sign of a show doing well with the way it's written so far.
All right. So IMDb includes the credits runtime as well, but it doesn't include the like before the episode, like previously on Daredevil. I found through Cryptic HD Quality or Cryptic 4K Qual on Twitter, they had the actual screen runtimes for each of the episodes. It was 58 minutes for the first episode, down to 47 for episode 2, which went down to 44 for episode 3. And then episode 4 will be 52 minutes, so we're getting another long one. And then 5 is down to 39 minutes. 6 is 42, 7's 40, 8 47, and then the finale is 57, so it goes back up to about an hour. The only other thing that looks weird to me on here, it looks like we'll get episode 4 this week, and then next week it looks like we get episode 5 and 6 together. Like it's
Yeah,
showing
I saw that they were doing something.
yeah,
I thought I saw they were experimenting a little bit with the way they release things.
and then it'll go back to weekly, April 1st, the 8th, and the 15th for the final 3 episodes. Well, I'm excited. I'll be stoked to have 2 episode drop for that March 25th date.
Yeah, I think also it makes the good thing about, there's many bad things to talk about, the streaming model of television, like short seasons that come out every once in a while, every like 10 years. Um, but on the plus side, if they are smart about it, if they are confident and casual enough about it, they don't have to rush. They don't have to like force the length of an episode. So the fact that they think, okay, so the part of the story that we are telling in episode 4 or 5 or whatever, we 39 minutes, 39, 40 minutes, this is enough. We do not have to have fillers. The fact that they are able to go to up to 1 hour but choose not to me, it feels like they are not trying to force a certain length on the show. They're like, okay, this is the little story arc we have in this episode. This is how long it takes, and that's it. And I think that's a pretty good sign that they are very confident in the story that they are telling. The fact that they can oscillate so hard with, it's like 20 minutes difference almost, and also the fact that they are dropping some of the episodes like in pairs. It's also very interesting, and it's like you get basically a movie. Like we got a movie last week or like 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
with when we got the first episodes. Then we're gonna, as you said, like the next week we're gonna get another movie because it's like 2 episodes back to back. Like that's good stuff.
Usually, I like consistency in general. However, when it comes to things like runtimes, I feel like it's a sign of confidence. If you have an episode that's that much shorter, that tells me that that episode is exactly what they want it to be. It's not trying to fill up a stat sheet of runtime and get to 54 minutes or whatever it would need for like TV. Where like if it was on cable television, you have to have like 44 minutes of footage because the other 17 minutes will be commercials. So you couldn't have like a 39-minute when you have a 1 hour time slot because that would be either a shit ton of commercials or it wouldn't make the runtime. Being on streaming, it's like whatever episode 5 is at 39 minutes, I feel like that it is exactly 100% whatever they were hoping to accomplish with that one episode. So just by looking at the runtimes for this season, I feel like I'm kind of hyped for whatever that one episode is now. Like I have extra hype for it. Maybe I shouldn't have, but for it to be that wonky, like that's a very short runtime compared to what the other episodes are. I feel like it's got to be like an action-packed 39 minutes of television.
Oh yeah, that would be good.
Well, we have hit
Um,
about an
you know,
hour and a half here, so I feel like we should wrap. So kind of like what we did for Wheel of Time, ignoring the 7-year gap since we've last seen these characters. If you're grading just TV in the 2020s, 3 episodes so far on the 1 through 10 scale, where do you have Daredevil Born Again so far?
yeah, I was about to ask you the same question. So I don't know, like let's say if season one of the original show was the the best one, and I think it probably was, but the season two and season three were still very very good. I think Punisher arc in season two was peak television.
Yeah.
Um, if that's a 10, if season one is a 10, I think this is a very close so far. Obviously, we don't have the whole thing, but as you said, like the first 3 episodes, at least an 8, an easy 8, and I'm probably being just like too strict just in case. I think
Yeah.
it's at least an easy 8. What about you?
For I'll say for me the only hero, and not necessarily a hero, but the only comic book show of recent times I have to compare it to is Penguin, and I think Penguin is an absolute gem of a television show. I think they everything with that show was just as close to perfect as one could hope it to be. If that is a 10 for me, I feel like through 3 episodes so far, Daredevil Born Again is 8.5. 8.5 to 9, like somewhere in that ballpark for me. Like, I'm much more of a DC guy than a Marvel guy, but in general, I love all the comic book stuff. I feel like it's just I can't get enough of
Yeah,
it.
same.
And I'm trying to remember the last time I saw another Marvel television show that I feel so good about like I do with Daredevil Born Again. Like this might be one of their better shows that they've made. And again, just thinking off the top of my head, this one is really really strong. I have almost no critiques of this other than a couple spots here or there as I'm watching. But even like the Easter eggs in the background have been fun to pick up. And now that you've told me about these other channels that have been doing these Easter egg breakdowns and things you have missed, I feel like before I hit episode 4 this week, I'm going to have to go back and watch those to see what else I've missed. Because for me, a lot of the Easter egg stuff that doesn't really impact the plot, it still brings me a lot more like joy. And I just have a lot of fun seeing that stuff and going, oh, yeah, remember that comic book that this was brought? Oh, yeah, remember? It's just, I feel like they've done a good job of taking care of both my like Easter egg nerdiness and even my casual, well, even if I don't look at this like a comic book show, just how good TV is this? How much fun do I have watching this? And like you were saying with Wheel of Time season 2, you just felt like you were having a good time while you were watching it. That is me with Daredevil, where it's just like every episode has just been outside of the first 5 minutes. And even then, that was good TV. They were just breaking my heart.
But you were loving every second of it.
Yeah, it was
It
love hate for
hurts,
five
but I like
minutes,
it.
and then love all after
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
Well, I
Well said.
appreciate you linking up with me again so soon after our last pod. I'll probably try to drop this on like Wednesday or Thursday, just to give the first one a little bit of breathing room, build up our
Yeah,
catalog, and let's do this again soon for some other stuff.
for sure. I think we did do season 2 of Reacher last year, the year before
Hmm.
that, or whenever. So Reacher is coming out, so I guess we'll probably link up for that too, and we'll be doing Daredevil and Wheel of Time hopefully every week or
Yeah.
most of the time at least. And there's I think some other things that might be coming out in the very near future. But yeah, I think like very very soon we'll be talking again.
On the back end, folks, before we leave here, I just want to drop this bit of knowledge on you guys. The podcast is now out officially. We will start pushing it on our social media platforms. We are still looking at a way of linking this over to YouTube where it doesn't just show up in the main feed, but maybe shows up under like our specific podcast part of the channel. That way, those of you who do not want to get alerts for every single podcast we drop, they don't have to deal with that. That being said, every single other major podcasting platform that you do listen to podcast on, this one is on that, whether that be Apple or Spotify, Deezer, any of them. If it's a big one, we are officially available on those platforms as well. So feel free to give us a listen to wherever you listen to your podcast at. And if you have any ideas or feedback, or hey guys, here's a cool thing that you missed from whatever episode you guys were just talking about or whatever movie you're covering, shoot us an email. And that email address is FOFcast at fellowshipoffans.com. Again, it's the FoFCast at fellowshipoffans.com. We'll make sure that we're checking that inbox every day. Whatever you guys send in, we will do our best to respond to. If you guys have questions or comments or concerns, we'll probably read them out during the show. So if you can make it a little bit of funny, it'll go a long way of making air. That's it for me. Again, appreciate you, Big Time Strider, for linking up with me. And we hope to catch you guys on the next one. Peace.
Thank you and goodbye.